Hi, it is November 22nd, 2023, and in this video, I would like to present my 4 rules for dealing with shitty people. And so, um, first of all, I want to define what shitty is. And so, to me, there's basically 3 types of shitty behavior. There's dishonesty, which I think is typically rooted in fear. There is being inconsiderate, which I think is often rooted in ignorance. No one's ever called them out. No one's ever said to them, hey, you're hurting people. And so it's kind of an ignorance based uh, shitty behavior. And then there's cruelty, which is just hate driven. I want these people to suffer, and so I'm going to be shitty. Um, and all 3 of these types of behavior can cause a lot of harm, can cause a lot of damage. One isn't necessarily more harmful than the others. They can all create a lot of destruction, a lot of suffering, and they do on a pretty regular basis because this world's pretty packed full of shitty people, and it's not everyone. And there are some people who are cool, and I think probably most of the people who watch my channel would fit into that group. And but they're unavoidable. They're everywhere, and people need to know how to deal with them and what to think about. So that's what shitty behavior is. The 4 rules. So the first rule I have is I seek to avoid shitty people as much as I can. And again, they're unavoidable. I mean, you drive down the freeway, you're going to have shitty drivers. You go anywhere you go, there's going to be shitty people. They're going to show up. They're pretty much unavoidable. However, for the most part, when I have a chance, I try to avoid them because I don't want to be subjected to their shitty behavior. And I don't want to get myself in a situation where I end up having to face significant consequences because someone's just kind of pushed me over a certain limit. So my number 1 rule is to avoid them as much as possible. My number 2 rule is I don't pretend that shitty behavior isn't shitty. If I have an opportunity to call it out when I see it or to let people know that I think what they're doing is shitty, I'm going to do it. If I have an opportunity and if I'm not undertaking excessive risk in doing so. So the number 3 rule, this kind of goes into that, is that I think it's important to consider the consequences of our own reactions and our own calling people out. Am I risking my health, my life, my job, my money, other people's approval? There's a lot I might be risking, but and so I think I need to be aware of those consequences. I need to understand what the risks are before I decide that this is still worth it. And in most cases, for me, it is. I'm willing to face the loss of those things because we live in a world full of shitty people. I want it to be a better world, and if that ends up ultimately costing me those things, then that just is what it is, and it's a cause that I believe in. However, I do think it's important to be aware of those consequences. Because there might be a circumstance where by not saying something now, we can have more of an impact later, things like that. So that's rule 3, is to consider the consequences of my reactions. Rule 4 is to keep the big picture in mind. And the big picture is that people who act shitty in general, they are not likely to be holding space for others. And they're not, this inconsiderate behavior. Well, you're not considering others. And if you're being cruel, you're certainly not considering them. And if you're being dishonest, that's actually pretty inconsiderate too, because it hurts people. So all this shitty behavior, the kind of common theme is that they're not holding space for others. And because they don't, it's actually putting them at a pretty significant disadvantage. They have a diminished ability to predict outcomes and the actions of others because they're not taking the time to consider the motives, the emotions, the experiences of those others. So in the long run, I can expect that by not being shitty, by actually holding space, by actually not allowing hate or fear to drive me, that I'm actually putting myself in a position to expect more favorable outcomes in the long run. Now, in the short run, being shitty can provide a certain benefit to a person. Maybe they steal some money, they have some money now, maybe they have the approval of the other bullies that they're friends with. Maybe they enjoy a speculative increase in the price of something they're invested in because they never considered any of the contrarian opinions. They only considered their own little group and what they're doing. And because a lot of people did this, they had a short-term appreciation of that investment class just based off supply and demand. But in the long run, shitty behavior is going to be revealed for what it is. And people are going to face a loss of their fake friendships, the loss of their reputations if they've engaged in theft and fraud, the loss of their investments if they followed the crowd rather than considering others. And if you believe in God, they may also face losing his favor, not just in this life, but also in the afterlife. And so the number 4 rule, keep the big picture in mind. And just know that even though these people might be getting rewarded in small ways in the short run, in the long run, it's unlikely to work out well for them. So just to recap, number 1 rule, avoid them as much as possible. Number 2, don't pretend their behavior isn't shitty. So even if I'm not in a position where I'm going to directly call out that behavior, I'm still not going to sign off on it. I'm still not going to give them the impression that I think what they're doing is okay. I may abstain from directly calling it out because there's a particular consequence I'm not willing to face for the sake of doing that, but I'm not going to sign off. I'm not going to ever say, yeah, this is okay to act this way. So that's number 2. Don't pretend shitty behavior isn't shitty. Number 3, consider the consequences of your reactions. And number 4, keep the big picture in mind. So with that, you guys have happy Thanksgiving, and I'll talk to you later.